Here's the exact step-by-step process that you can use to raise pre-development capital for your first multi-million-dollar development. And this is the same system that helped me raise over $1 million in just 24 hours in my first fundraise. And by the end of this video, you will have my complete playbook from start to finish and action steps you can take today. Hey guys, I'm Evan Holiday. I've developed over 2,300 units of affordable housing, and I've coached dozens of others doing their first deal. And today I'm breaking down my entire pre-development capital raising process. You'll have my specific documents, emails, scripts, and exactly how we raise funds for either affordable housing or market rate development. So why do you need pre-development capital in the first place? So think about this is your capital that gets you from the very initial deposit on your piece of land through the time that you get to financial loan closing with your tax credit investor and your construction lender. And that can be a 1 to 2 year process, sometimes even longer. And in order to get you from that first starting block to closing on your deal, you're going to need to spend on quite a few different things. It'll be architects, engineers, plans, third-party reports like market studies, appraisals, geotech, phase 1. You'll have your state agency fees, and of course your land deposits throughout that entire process. And here's a timeline to show you each stage of that pre-development process. You have getting the site under your contract, your land contract, and then from there going into your site due diligence. Then you want to look at how are you adding significant value. Usually for us, this is through rezoning or finding a grant or funding source that we get awarded for that site. Then you have your plans and permits. Next, you have your tax credits and funding applications. Then you have your financial due diligence and then closing, construction. Then from there, you go into your lease up, your stabilization, and then your asset management once you have a stabilized, fully occupied property. So again, the pre-development capital will just take you from getting the site under contract to financial closing and starting construction. Also, it's really important to understand, as you can see on this graph, that there is very little money spent at the very front end of the deal. You should really just be spending money on your deposit, getting the land under contract, and ideally getting enough length of time on that contract so you can do enough due diligence to see if this is a go or no go. And you want to get to that fork in the road as soon as you possibly can, because one, you don't want to spend money on a deal that doesn't make sense. So you want to figure that out. You want to figure out if it's a no as soon as possible, or you want to figure out if this is a go so you can start spending a lot of money to get it to closing as soon as possible. And usually for us, that fork in the road is when we add significant value, like I was saying earlier. So that's a rezoning or getting funding awarded. Once you have added more value to the project, then that de-risks and takes out a lot of the risk from the equation for your deal. So it should almost look like a hockey stick, like it'll be very slow burn at the very front end of the project. Then once you get enough due diligence or you add value through rezoning or through getting a grant, then it should look like a hockey stick and it should jump up the amount of funding that you spend. But I want to point out that it is supremely important that you fundraise or you plan out how much capital you need and when you will need it ahead of time, because you do not want to get into a project and figure out that this project could be a home run project. You maybe ran out of pre-development funds or you didn't have enough funds ready to go so that you couldn't extend the land because of a deposit, or you couldn't finish your construction plans and your deal inevitably dies on the vine because you didn't have enough pre-development capital. Also, keep in mind, all of this capital plus the return for your investors will be refunded or reimbursed at the full financial closing. It'll be either paid out by the construction lender or the tax credit equity partner that you will choose later on for this deal. But before you raise a single dollar, you obviously have to have the foundations. You have to have a really good deal, a deal you're obviously either under contract or about to be under contract. And then also you have to have a really good project narrative. What is a project narrative? That is a 10 to 20 page document that covers A to Z of what your investor wants to see about this project. This includes your executive summary, the site overview, what makes this deal unique specifically, your market data, your team resumes or track record, your site plan or any due diligence you have already on your site, your financial projections, your timeline, your risk analysis, and finally, capital protection. How are you going to protect the investor capital? I would not reinvent the wheel here. I would join email lists of other multifamily investors who are fundraising or syndicating for capital, raising private investor capital. I would get on their investor email lists, and then I would look and download the PDFs that they're using to fundraise, and then I would just copy it, just do it in Canva or hire somebody to do it based on that template. This is exactly what I did for my first capital raise. And when you make this narrative, make sure you're thinking like an investor. What would an investor want to see in this? First off, they're always thinking about capital protection first. That is very important. At a minimum, they want to get their original investment back. Then secondly, they're thinking about how can I make a good return on that capital. So always think with that lens as you're putting together your project narrative. Now, here's where a lot of people get confused. There are actually two different phases of the pre-development capital. A seed capital is just like any startup. It's to get the ball moving. It's the very front end capital. This is to help either tie up the land or any early reports or due diligence. This is anywhere from $25,000 to $100,000, and this can help you get the land under contract or run the reports. This can cover your 10 to 20K land deposit, your phase 1 report, any initial site due diligence or site feasibility studies, any site plans or architect plans that are needed to make sure this project is a go. Now, quick tip here, as long as you write your contracts well, you should be able to have your deposit refundable for the first 6 months while you are doing due diligence on this site. So that does lower some of the risk for your initial seed investment. Now, once you have your site tied up and you've added some significant value to that through rezoning or getting funding awarded, then you want to look at the pre-development capital fundraise, which is a much bigger capital raise, anywhere from about $1 million to $2 million for a 200 unit development. And this takes you from that site with added value all the way through starting construction. How much pre-development capital should you raise? A good rule of thumb that we use is anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 per unit for pre-development expenses. But you should map out all of your pre-development costs month by month as you think they will come up so that you can plan ahead for these expenses. If you don't have that seed capital yourself and you aren't able to raise that from partners or individuals, then I would highly recommend you look at getting a co-development partner. This is a group that can bring even the seed capital, the pre-development capital, and also bring guarantees for loan and equity partners and the multifamily development experience. And the other option is to find an angel investor. This is somebody that can front the seed capital money. These are usually people that you already know or have a strong relationship with, and ideally somebody that has some kind of background in real estate and understands real estate. Start with the people you know and then adapt as needed. When raising seed capital, you should offer anywhere from 15 to 20% because they are taking some of the highest risk on the deal. Also, I want to caveat and say that you can adjust the returns. You can go higher if you're not getting the right investor appetite that you are looking for. Now, here's the golden rule that separates successful developers from everybody else. Do not try to raise pre-development capital until you've already added significant value to the development. Get it under contract with your seed capital, and then from there, look at rezoning or getting funding awarded from a state agency or grants or tax credits before you start the pre-development raise. This allows for you to take a lot of risk off the table for your investors. Here's an example. We took an agricultural piece of land that we knew was in the path of progress, but was on the edge of town, so we put it under contract for about $2 million. We then were able to work with the city to upzone the land to allow for multifamily development and get it annexed into the city that was previously in the county. And just by doing that, we got it reappraised at $4 million. So we basically doubled the value of the land just through the rezoning process. So that adds significant value to the land. And then any grants that we were able to get, that would add significant value, obviously, to the future development that it would go on that land. Think of this like your insurance policy. This is like your rainy day, taking risk off the table for both you and your future pre-development investors. If something goes wrong and you can't develop that piece of land, especially if you're rezoning it to add value, then you can sell that piece of land for more than you already have it under contract for. That gives your investors a lot of confidence that their initial investment is protected. So once you've added that value, now you're able to step into structuring your investment offering. One thing I want to make sure is clear. I'm not an SEC attorney. I'm not a financial advisor. Please talk to your advisors throughout this entire process. But what I do see people do a lot of is overthink and overcomplicate fundraising. Whenever you're setting up your investment vehicle or your legal setup for raising the money, you can either look at raising it through a loan or through equity. There's many other options, but we're just touching on these two today. And what I would say is what we prefer in the pre-development process, it's a lot easier to set up and a lot simpler, is a loan structure. So here are the specific terms that we use. We provide a return of anywhere from 8 to 12% per year. The term is anywhere from 1 to 2 years. For payment, we return their initial capital plus the returns once we get to our construction loan closing. And for recourse, we offer a personal guarantee by me, and if I have any partners on the deal, they sign that as well. So here's what this looks like in real dollars. If an individual were to invest $100,000 with us today, then in 2 years, once we've closed on the financing for construction, then we would pay back their initial $100,000 investment plus about $24,000 of interest on their capital. And one thing I would say is deals always take longer than you think, so make sure to give yourself some wiggle room. Our deals can take anywhere from 12 to 24 months, sometimes longer though. We have deals that have taken as long as 3 years to close. So I would say always put leeway into your legal documents that will give you ample time and flexibility if you need it down the line. Also, throughout this process, I would talk to your CPA who will be doing the tax returns for these investments, because there may be some creative ways that you can look in making this more tax beneficial for your investor. But before you can offer this to anyone, you have to make sure you get your legal structure right. This is not optional. You need to work with a securities attorney who works in SEC compliant investment vehicles. And you should budget about $5,000 to $10,000 for the attorney fees for a pretty straightforward capital raise. And you do not want to be skimping on these fees or this attorney. Your attorney will ensure that your investment vehicle is compliant with all SEC rules and regulations and will be able to put together all the documents that you will need to make this happen. This will include a PPM or private placement memorandum. This is like the full offering of the investment vehicle to your investors. And this will include an operating agreement, which is like the rule book or the setup for the LLC, which will house the investment vehicle. And obviously make sure everything in these documents matches your understanding of this investment opportunity, especially before you share it with investors. Now that you have the legal structure in place, let's get to building your investor pipeline. To start your investor list, if you don't already have one, you can put this into Excel or your CRM, and you want to have an Excel with these columns in it: name, email, phone number, relationship type, friend, family, or business contact. Also, who recommended or who connected you, if that were the case. Your estimate for how much they might invest, and then notes on last touch point or next steps. Start with your friends, your family, and your close business relationships. Also be thinking about who are those successful in business or even entrepreneurship that would have extra capital ready to invest for opportunities like this. You can meet these people at business networking events, real estate networking or investor meetups, entrepreneur meetups, or even mastermind events. But be thinking about, where is my ideal investor and what kind of events or what kind of places could I possibly meet these people if I don't already know them? But hands down, start with people that you already know. Those are your warmest leads that could become potential real investors. And if you have multiple partners on a deal, have each of your partners do this and share so you have a combined list. Now, here's the critical part. Not all outreaches are made equal. Number one is in-person meetings. Text, call, or email your specific contacts and ask to get breakfast or lunch, or even go to their office, whatever is most convenient for them. Bring your project narrative with you, professionally put together, well printed, and be prepared for these questions. What is the investment vehicle? What is the time frame for returning my capital? What's my return? What's my risk? Have you or anyone on your team done this before? The key is to having a really good team around you, especially if this is your first deal, because investors will always want to see track record, and they're always going to ask, have you done this before? Number two is phone calls. Now, not as ideal as an in-person meeting, but you want to follow the same script and process for the in-person meeting, and ideally that's a video call over a phone call. And number three, email campaigns. Now, this is a professional email with deal highlights and a very specific call to action. So I want to dive into real quick the email strategy that I used on my very first fundraise, where we raised $1 million. To create a successful email campaign, don't start from scratch. Just like we copied other multifamily syndicators for their project narrative, that PDF, we did the exact same thing with our first email. We literally just copied the same template. We just made it our own based on our own deal, our own returns, and our own deal metrics. So your email must include a professional banner with your company branding, your deal overview with bullet points, why this is a no-brainer investment, and a link to a pre-recorded webinar. The webinar is critical. For this webinar, you want to pre-record a Zoom call of you going page by page through the PDF of the project narrative, and you want to act like you are on a live call with an investor, walking them through why this is a no-brainer investment opportunity. And you want to include a screenshot from your webinar in the email body so they can see it and be excited about clicking on and watching that webinar. And for your call to action button, you want to make it very obvious, and they can click the button and quickly share their interest in investing in this deal. And have that button take them directly to a Google form where they can share all the details that you need to get them in the packet. So you'll have these exact questions in your Google form. You want their name, their contact information, what investment amount are they considering? You want to make sure to state your minimum investment there. What investment vehicle would they be using for this investment? This could be just through a direct investment. This could be through an LLC that they own or even a trust. And then you ask, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to invest? This is important because it allows you to prioritize your follow-up. But this is where most people drop the ball, is with the follow-up. I like to call this the dialing for dollars. The money is really made in the follow-up. As soon as somebody fills out that form, do two things simultaneously. One, call them immediately while their interest is still hot. Ask, do you have any questions about the deal? And are you ready to move forward with the documents? And step number 2, you want to email them the PPM with their name and the investment amount that they gave you in the Google form already filled out in the PPM. Also, send a PDF with the wire instructions for your new bank account that you made for the new LLC. Make sure to set up this bank account and LLC before you start the fundraising process. All investor capital should go into this dedicated account. Make it as easy as possible for them to say yes. This is why we pre-fill everything out. You can always change it later or they can change the document, but it just is one simple thing to make it easier for them to say yes. If you have development partners, assuming each of you have your own network, your own contacts, then you can multiply the effect of what you're doing by having them do the exact same thing, that exact same process that we just went through. Now, here's a key tip. You want to add urgency to every single conversation you have with your potential investors. You always want to make sure to let them know that you would love to have them on this investment, that spots are filling up quickly, and it'd be ideal if they could make a decision soon to make sure that they can get in on this great opportunity. Obviously, at this point, you've already talked about how great the opportunity is. You've addressed any of their concerns, any of potential objections, but you always want to end with a sense of urgency, or else they could be making their decision for months. And by that time, you've already needed that capital. So you want to put a deadline on your fundraising, and then you want to, each step of the way, you want to remind them that other people are looking at this and you're only taking a limited number of capital. And of course, you need to know if they are on board and they want to invest very soon. Let me tell you how this all played out with my first fundraise experience. When I did my first deal, I was completely nervous. I was a wreck. I was taking everything that I just mentioned. I was copying other people. I was learning as I went. I even had a podcast in which I interviewed other people, and I used that as a way for me to learn this system. But when it really came down to me, like pressing the button to send my first fundraising email, I couldn't eat the entire day. I was freaking out. Not kidding, guys. I was freaking out so hard. I was like, what if I don't raise a single dollar? And what I will say is the nervousness around your first fundraise is completely normal. I felt it 100%. Every developer feels this on their first fundraise. But here's what made the difference for me. For 2 years before I did that very first deal and that very first fundraise, I started a podcast and I basically built my brand and my social media. Through that, I was able to offer significant value by sharing my experience, my learnings through real estate, through development, entrepreneurship, and also sharing journeys of other entrepreneurs and CEOs through the podcast. So I was building that trust, that know, like, and trust that helps you make it infinitely easier when you go to actually raise money. And I was doing all of that value adding for my audience before asking for anything in return. And through that process, I was able to build an email list where over 2,000 people trusted. And when I finally went to send that email, press send, I kid you not, I had no idea what was going to happen when I sent that email. 24 hours later, I raised $1 million freaking dollars. It was mind-blowing to me. I was like, what the heck? I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know that was possible. I didn't know that was feasible whatsoever. And this is the crazy thing is I had partners on this deal. I had 2 other partners. We were each supposed to raise a third of the capital. So I was really only supposed to raise, I was responsible for raising $333,000. Well, I ended up raising all $1 million with one email in 24 hours because we followed this proven system that worked and we built relationship and trust ahead of time with our investors. So my partners ended up actually just shifting to, they still went out and fundraised, but basically their capital was backup capital, just in the case that one of our investors didn't end up following through and investing in the deal. Raising that backup capital taught me that it's important, if investors are ready to commit to your deal, it never hurts to have a little extra capital raised. Think like 5 to 10% of what you need, add a little on as contingency, because at the end of the day, going back to what we said at the very beginning of the video, you never want to run out of capital when you need it the most in pre-development, especially if you're getting close to the finish line and you need that extra deposit or architect fee to get to the finish line. You don't want to run out of capital and have to raise again for that money. All right, so you have the complete system that I use from my very first deal that I did even to today. So here's a few things that I want you to take action on right after this video. Create your investor contact list in Excel, and don't pitch yet, just try to connect and build relationships. And if you want to learn from me directly, check out our Affordable Development Mastery coaching program in the link below. I created this program exactly for people like you trying to work on closing your first affordable housing development. I'll show you the exact systems that me and my team use on deals that we do at Holiday Ventures and walk you through how to form great partnerships with others in the space and get you over the finish line on your first deal. So that's my complete step-by-step pre-development capital raising process. I hope this helped you. I hope this added massive value for you. If it did, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you can have awesome content just like this delivered to you every week. With that, I'll see you soon.